So when it comes to watching our favorite TV shows on different streaming apps and media devices, everyone just wants it to be simple. Nobody wants to go through the hassles of switching different cables and unplugging cords at the back of TV just to be able to stream in different devices, just to watch your favorite shows. And so now that brings us to the age of streaming media devices where they each all try and make things simpler for us just to be able to enjoy our content without having to hassle too much and struggle just to be able to find whatever we want to watch. Now, a little while ago, Amazon came out with the Fire TV Cube, and then most recently they came up with the upgraded version that has an Ethernet port, an upgraded processor, and an HDMI in port. The argument then becomes, what should be convincing you not to get this rather than what should be convincing you to get it. So design-wise, it maintains a similar look as the previous one, just maintaining structure of a cube. This time the surface on the cube itself is the speaker, which is better than the previous iteration, which had the speaker facing downward, and that just muffled the sound. So on the new one, it's much more better for sound distribution. Now, just like any Echo devices, if you own any, then you can also increase and decrease the volume of the Alexa assistant just at the top of the cube itself. Cosmetically, for me personally, I like where the cube places the light bar for Alexa. It just looks better, and it's an iconic trademark for every Echo device. Now, placing this anywhere shouldn't be difficult because it just looks like a piece of decoration and it hardly takes up any space, so it's just easy for it to blend in. Now, the remote for me is actually really welcome. I personally don't like the small different remotes that streaming media devices have for whatever reason. I do think this one, it feels more like an actual remote. It's fuller and it has more buttons and commands just to feel like an actual TV remote. Now, with the new additions at the back, there is the HDMI in port. Now, this is a Blu-ray player, and it allows you to also be able to connect different consoles and even different streaming devices, just so you don't have to unplug different cords and HDMI cables to connect to your television. Also, there's the addition of the USB port, which you can connect to, say, a camera, and also it can be used for an increase in storage. And there's also an Ethernet port, which wired is always better than wireless, so it gives you the opportunity to be able to hold a much more firm connection if you want to use it wired. Now, just a disclaimer, this remote is an upgrade from the previous one, but it's still not the Pro remote, which you'll have to buy separately. And basically, the Pro remote allows you to do things like routines, and this one is just a standard new upgraded remote, but it's not the Pro remote. And there's also an IR extender, but unfortunately there's no cable for that, which you also have to get separately. And as for the HDMI port, it's a 2.1 port, so that means it's going to be running you at least 60 frames per second. Now, the biggest upgrade is the new 2.4 GHz octa-core processor, and according to Amazon, it is 2 times faster than the Fire TV 4K Max. Now, the most noticeable moments when you'll notice how much better the process is when navigating through the UI, switching between different apps, doing the voice commands, also when you do decide to play different games. The setup process is really easy, and I think the UI is not too overwhelming. It's really easy to understand, and quite honestly, I think it's just really straightforward, which what helps is having the Alexa voice assistant. So even if the UI is a little overwhelming, you can just use the hands-free commands to switch and navigate between different apps and different shows you want to watch. And a positive for me is it is capable of running 4K Ultra HD. It also has Dolby Atmos and Dolby Vision. Now, there's also Wi-Fi 6E supported, so if you don't want to use it wired, it will hold a much more stronger connection with less interference. But is it going to be better than wired? Not necessarily so, but it's going to maintain at least a much better connection. Now, the bottom line is the new Fire TV Cube is especially good for versatility if you want to be able to connect different streaming devices and other mediums to it, including consoles, because you can just connect them to the HDMI input. Obviously, there's Wi-Fi 6E, which is supported, and there's also the addition of hearing aid support. As I mentioned before, this is like an Echo device, so you do also have the capability to just use hand-free commands to switch to different options, apps, or to just navigate the UI without actually having to use the remote. So for example, you could just walk in, say the A name, and it's going to listen to you, and you can tell it, for example, to turn on the TV or navigate left, right, or put a streaming device, or even whatever command you might have that pertains to navigating through the UI or making your life just easier watching a different show. This is basically like having an extraordinarily good Echo device that allows you to watch TV. And for me personally, I prefer this over the Fire Stick 4K Max because this acts more like a centralized hub that you can use if you want to connect, for example, your Apple TV. You can have something else, maybe your Chromecast, and you can just plug them there instead of having to unplug different cords just to switch to different sources on your TV. And at the same time, you can also use hands-free commands, which is a big positive, and I think is one of the underrated parts of having the Fire TV Cube, because majority of the things you can do on the remote you can already do just by using your voice. So even if you don't have the remote, doesn't mean you don't need it, but even if you don't have one, you can use a lot of commands to navigate your way around the UI. But that's my opinion and why I like it. Obviously, let me know what you think. If you found this video helpful, you know what to do. I'm Jadija. Have a good day.